Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live, presented by BetMGM. This is the Saturday college basketball betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as they do each and every Saturday, are my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Mike Calabrese, Mike Randall, and of course, the one and only Greg Waddell. Have a lot to get to today. It's the last semi. It's not totally full Saturday slate. I think we have 20 something games next Saturday with a bunch of championships. So that should be a good one as well. We'll be back same time as always, but we should have an awesome day. Just some great matchups. We'll get to two of the marquee matchups, including Duke Carolina. We'll give two of our best bets, throw a little moneyline underdog parlay in there as well. But before we get started, I do want to remind everyone to make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there, in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. And also, as I previously mentioned, BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Before we get started, Greg, you hinted at something right before we went on the show. We have a lot of great matchups, but we also have a lot of teams that are clinched, either as one seeds in the tournament or one seeds in their conference tournament. So you think things could potentially get a little weird today?
Yeah, I'm sensing a chaos day, Stuck. That's what I feel. You know how you roll out of bed, you step outside first day of March, and sometimes things just feel a little brighter. Maybe the air feels a little crisper. Today feels ominous for some reason. It feels a little overcast in my humble Michigan abode. I do. I think there's a lot of really good basketball teams that don't have a lot of motivation today, playing some okay basketball teams that are extremely desperate. That usually leads to some interesting results. I'm excited to break it all down with you three.
All right, well, without further ado, let's jump right into our first best bets. I'll kick things off. I'm going to go with the Trojans of USC. I think this team, speaking of teams that are already clinched, Arizona, they blew out UCLA, and then Washington State got upset by Washington. So Arizona has everything clinched in the Pac-12 tournament. But most importantly, USC's finally healthy. This is a team that some thought could compete for a Pac-12 championship. They just weren't healthy. I mean, go back to the first meeting with Arizona. They played without Ellis and Collier. Well, now they're fully healthy. Over their past 6 games, if you look at their adjusted overall efficiency, playing like a top 30 team. And they have the size inside. I worry a little bit about Arizona just killing them on the offensive glass. But this is a team 4-2 over the past 6. Their only 2 losses in double overtime against Colorado in a game they controlled throughout, and at Washington State in a game they controlled throughout. So this team is playing much better. Collier's playing out of his mind. I think this is too many points for USC. A now healthy USC playing an Arizona team that still has a couple blemishes away from home. They lost to Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State. I think they're 342nd in Haslametrics away from home metric. So don't play as well away from home. We're celebrating that win. And I think this is close to USC's Super Bowl after a disappointing year full of injuries. I think there's some value on the Trojans. Randall, I'll throw it to you. Where are you going for your first best bet?
The disrespect for South Carolina just continues over and over again. What does this team have to prove, especially on the road? Beat Tennessee on the road, beat Georgia, beat Mississippi, beat Texas A&M, and now you're going to give me basically 5 points here going at Mississippi State, a Mississippi State team with Chris Jans with one of the most awful game plans I've ever seen against Kentucky. They just wanted to run with them. They are terrible at offensive turnovers, Mississippi State. They are terrible on the free throw line, and South Carolina will beat you up. They'll play physically. They're in a 4-way tie right now in the SEC at 12-5, so a lot of things can break out here with seeding. I love Lamont Paris. I love this team. They continue to disrespect them. They've won 6 SEC road games. I don't trust Mississippi State. Could the Bulldogs win? Sure. You're going to give me that many points. I will take South Carolina here. I believe getting 5 at this point. I think they can win the game outright.
Yeah, one of the many spots this year where the spot feels like it's just a bit inflated, which is happening more and more over the past season plus. So I rolled with USC West. You're rolling with USC East. Greg, what you got for your first best bet?
I'm going to go to the Big East here, and if I wasn't a coward, I would have considered betting this outright on the money line, but I'm taking the points. I'm taking Providence plus 10 against UConn. I mentioned it at the top of the show. Motivation questions for a lot of teams for me today. This UConn team, it seems like they clinched this conference outright 3 weeks ago. I know that's not factually accurate, but in my heart, it is. Would be a good time to rest some guys. They've had injury problems throughout this year. I don't know if that's going to happen or not because Dan Hurley's a maniac. And they're quite frankly, UConn is good enough that even if they do rest guys, who knows? They might blitz a team. But Providence is desperate. And this is a really hard place to play. The house formerly known as the Dunk. 7-1 Providence is in their last 8 senior nights. The only loss, infamously last year, when their head coach had already listed his house on Zillow. As far as I know, Kim English hasn't done that today. Last game, look at what they did. This was shortly after the Bryce Hopkins injury. Providence lost by just 9 at UConn. Duro and Carter were both great in that game, 20 points each. I think they can keep this close and make this extremely interesting, even down to maybe a final possession game.
Yeah, Adoro's the type of big that potentially can give UConn some trouble, right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, very versatile. He's been one of the best players in the last couple of weeks in the country, honestly, not just the conference. And look, I didn't mention this either. Providence 2-0 against the top 3 teams in the Big East outright. They beat Creighton and Marquette in this building already. Again, I don't know what UConn's motivation is going to be. I think it's a really good spot.
Well, hopefully if UConn goes up big, they look bored. I mean, I think they're ready for the NCAA tournament against Marquette. They did end up covering, but they almost didn't. With about 7-8 minutes to go, they basically just tried to run out the clock from that point on. But yeah, should be a raucous atmosphere. Providence playing for their tournament lives. Carter's been awesome. He's going to have a big game, but I like this as well. Calabrese, where are you headed for your first bet?
Let's go to the Sun Belt quarterfinals. And what's interesting to me is I get to back a team that's on its second double-digit win streak of the season. JMU has won 10 in a row. During that stretch, they've cracked the top 25 in terms of three-point shooting percentage and defending the three-point line. And they draw Marshall for the 3rd time this season. They killed them both times. They won by 16 at home and 26 on the road. And boat racing Marshall, it basically breaks down to this. Marshall is one of the most up-tempo teams in the entire country, but when they play other up-tempo teams, that's usually when they tend to play worse. Evan Maya's pace adjust metric basically identifies the teams that when they're playing at a certain pace, either it benefits them or hurts them. They're one of the bottom 15 teams in the entire country when they face an up-tempo squad. JMU actually leads the belt in possessions per game. And when you look at what they do, they always crush teams in the second half. They went on 10-0 runs or more against Marshall in the second half of both wins, and they're 3rd nationally in the country in those kill shot runs. So I see another one here in the quarters for a James Madison team that continues to be criminally underrated. How are they 28-3 with a 0% chance to get an at-large bid? I understand it should be difficult, but you're telling me if they make it all the way to the conference championship game and lose by a bucket, that they're not even going to get consideration? I think that this team is mad. When you listen to their head coach talk about it, they are laser focused for this tournament. I think you're going to see them continue to play well, and 11.5 is just not enough points. So I'll go ahead and lay it with the Dukes.
Maybe my friend Rocco Miller is watching. He would be able to know this. Maybe one of you know this. I don't think a team that's ever won 30 games has ever missed the NCAA tournament. But if James Madison gets to the conference championship and doesn't win it, they might be the first. Don't quote me on that though. But I think that no team that's won 30 has been left out. Yeah, really tough matchup for the Marshall offense in particular. All right, good stuff with our best bets. But let's take a little break in the action and talk about the first marquee matchup of the day. We're going to go to the Big 12. We're going to talk a little Kansas-Houston. Kansas absolutely shredded this Houston defense shot close to 65%, I think, in the first meeting. Obviously, that was in Lawrence, change of venue here. Houston has part of the Big 12 regular season title locked up. There is a scenario where they don't get the 1 seed. So they would have to lose this game. I think Texas Tech would have to win, Kansas State, and then Iowa State would have to beat Kansas State, something like that. So there's a chance they don't get the 1 seed. They do have part of the regular season championship already locked up, laying 8.5 here. I personally like Kansas. I don't look Houston. It looks like there's a little bit of fatigue. They're just not the same team without Tugler, especially on the defensive end. They just really miss his length. And from a depth perspective, the margin for error is so much smaller, not just for this game, but in the NCAA tournament for an aggressive defense that fouls a lot. If anyone gets in foul trouble, then, you're talking your length, your bigs. It's just that fat. You're already down Arsenault. They're already down a couple guys, and now you lose Tugler. It's just not the same team. Kansas can limit them on the offensive glass, where Houston lives. In the first meeting, Kansas 34 defensive rebounds. Kansas, different team when fully healthy. Houston still goes through droughts. Their big struggle from the line. I think Kansas keeps this within 8.5. Randall, you disagree here. You like the home Cougs.
Oh, I like the home Cougs, who can win the Big 12 regular season outright here with a victory. I know there's no Tugler, I get that, but we're looking at a Kansas team on the road that lost to UCF, that lost to West Virginia, that lost to Kansas State. They don't have depth either. Houston can scrap and get enough points here to pull this one away. Kansas, I understand they're going to battle them on the boards. They were equal with them, except for that blistering start that Kansas had. Save me with Johnny Furphy here on the road at Houston. I think they pushed them around. I think they forced turnovers. I think they have some good shooting regression, which they didn't have in the first 10 minutes of that game against Kansas. All the motivation in the world. Kansas has been poor on the road. Kansas this year just struggling, 3-6 against the spread on the road. Kansas has depth issues. So does Houston. Tie goes to the home team. I think they're too physical. I don't trust Kansas on the road. I think Houston is too much to play for here, and I think they cover.
Yeah, Kansas road woes do worry me a bit. Curious to see how Sampson adjusts his defense to what Self did the first time around. But Greg, you have the numbers to back up why you also like Kansas.
Yeah, it's all about the number to me on this one at 8.5. I'm really struggling to see where we got to that number. I think Houston should win this basketball game. Certainly, they're the better team and they have a lot to play for. But 6 of Houston's last 7 wins in the Big 12 play have come by less than 8 points. 6 of Kansas's 7 Big 12 losses on the course of the season have come by less than 8 points. And I get, Houston's the best team in this league. So, of course, when Kansas is losing to worse teams like UCF, you expect it to be closer. But Houston's played a lot of teams worse than Kansas and isn't blowing them out by more than 8 points. I don't know. This is inflated. This is a pressure spot to me. And yes, Houston is the class of this conference. You got to give them a ton of credit for what they've come in and done. If you go through the past couple of years, there have been some high leverage, high pressure spots with championships on the line that the Houston program has had, notably against Memphis in the American Conference Tournament Championship last year, the final game of the regular season 2 years ago. They lost those games outright as favorites. I don't know. I think this could get a little shaky. Let's not forget Kansas this season in a down year for Bill Self, 3-0 outright against KenPom top 5 opponents this year. There isn't another team in the country that has been that good at winning games against the 5 best teams in the sport. I think Kansas shows up and at minimum makes this a very close game.
Calabrese, are you going to make this a tie or swing it in Rock Chalk's favor?
I'm going to go with Kansas for a lot of the reasons that have been laid out so far. Houston is just not a good team against the spread. We have the sample size. They have the worst against the spread performance of any team in the AP top 10. They're 2-8 against the closing number in their last 10. And you look at the offensive lulls against Baylor, they almost blow that huge lead. It has to go to overtime to bail them out. And then against Oklahoma as well. I just don't trust their offense to keep their foot on the gas for 40 minutes. Defensively, they bring so much to the table, but we've already seen this Kansas team, albeit at Fog Allen, break them. So really, this handicap just comes down to McCullough for me. He's questionable in this matchup. I know that he tweaked his knee, and you have all kinds of commentary from Self, from Wayne Simeon on the Kansas podcast. Will he shut it down? Will he wait for the Big 12 tournament? Will he wait for March Madness? There's a lot of questions, but if he plays, this is an automatic play for me on the Jayhawks because he makes them so much better. He's one of the highest scoring guards in the Self era. I think if he blows up in the last games going through the Big 12 tournament, he could actually overtake Frank Mason as the highest scoring guard in the history of, Bill Self at Kansas. So that's how good he is. And that's what he gives to this offense, not only from 3-point range, but he gets to the line. And that's the stability that I really like that he brings to this offense. You saw it against K-State. He got to the line 7 times, made all 7 foul shots in a game that they ran away with late. So I'm going to go ahead with the Jayhawks here against the Houston offense that still leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
All right, see how it plays out. 3-1 in favor of Kansas. Randall, you're out on an island there, but let's move on to our money line underdog parlay. I will kick things off. I'm going to go with Columbia against Cornell. Cornell is pretty much locked into the 3 seed in Ivy Madness. They could, I guess, get a share of the Ivy title if they win, and then Yale and Princeton both get upset. But by the time this game tips, Yale would have likely already won at noon. Cornell's already locked into the 3 anyway. They don't really have much to play for. Columbia lost 5 straight, trying to finish above 500, last game of the year at home. But most importantly, what I'm looking for in a moneyline underdog, a lot of variance. Should be, 50 plus, potentially 3-pointers attempted in this game, just threes galore. So shooting regression, probably decide this one. Motivation questions for Cornell looking ahead to Ivy Madness. So I'll kick things off with Columbia. Randall, who are you throwing in?
Yeah, 2 teams going in different directions. I'll take Texas A&M at Ole Miss today. Texas A&M is still on the bubble, at least they believe so. 17-13, 8-9 in the SEC, but they've won 2 games in a row. They beat Georgia away. They beat Mississippi State. Buzz on the road as an underdog is really strong. They lost at home to Mississippi, and Mississippi, Chris Beard did a great job of Mississippi, but they're starting to give back right now. They've lost 7 of their last 9. They've lost 4 of their last 5. They can struggle on offense as well. 2 strong defensive teams, but that's where Buzz Williams is going to excel. They have Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford. That is enough. Texas A&M slight underdog here. I'll take them as the money line to throw it in the parlay. I think they get the job done to continue staying on the bubble, which is what Texas A&M does.
Greg?
I'm going to move to the SEC, and we have 2 marquee games that we highlighted. There's 3 marquee games on the schedule. I have to dip into Big Blue Nation a little bit here, Stuck. I'm taking Kentucky on the money line. Look, motivation-wise, again, Tennessee wrapped up this conference outright. I'm not saying they're not going to show up mentally for senior day at home against Kentucky. That would be insane. But they don't gain anything with a win here. Kentucky's playing for a double bye in the SEC tournament. That absolutely matters. This team is full of insane people. Like that, I know that's not the best analytical way to put this, but these guys are awesome in true road games against good teams. They're 3-0 outright on the road against KenPom top 40 opponents this year. These guys just show up. They're big game kids. Dillingham and Shepard lining up against anybody. They're going to savor this matchup with Connect to try and get some revenge. Let's look back at that first game where Tennessee did get the best of Kentucky at Rupp. No DJ Wagner, no Zvonimir Ivisic, who is now taking on a big role. He's been playing the most minutes almost every single game of the centers. The Vols needed 52 points combined from Ziegler and Jordan James to create some separation. I don't think that's going to happen again. Kentucky's won 6 of 7, including wins by double digits against Auburn and Alabama in that span. They're playing great ball right now. At this price, I think you have to sprinkle Kentucky.
Yeah, it's tough not to take that offense just with the high variance of them being able to just score with anyone and outscore anyone if they're on. Wagner's been playing a lot better of late as well. You mentioned Big Z. So different Kentucky team this time around, and we'll see how focused Tennessee is after getting their rings at South Carolina. Calabrese, what do you got to round us out?
I took James Madison on a 10-game winning streak as my first best bet. For the underdog here, I'm going to go with a team that's won 10 of 11, and that's UNLV catching plus 220 on the money line against Nevada. The Rebs are surging, and they're also coming off an impressive upset of San Diego State. 7-2 on the road this year, and their one loss in this 11-game streak, they blew an 8-point halftime lead to the same Nevada Wolfpack team. So I think they're very close. It really just comes down to the availability of Thomas. He's been their go-to guy in the backcourt. He's seen in a walking boot this week, but apparently, according to beat writers, it's just a precaution. This is the frustration with mid-major basketball. You never really know what the true story is until at least warmups. Check his availability. If he's a go, I think this game is a lot closer to a coin flip than plus 220. So I'll go ahead and take the value with the run Rebs.
All right, good stuff. We got Columbia, A&M, Kentucky, UNLV, some juicy dogs in there. Good luck if you're following along at home. Hit that like, subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Really helps us out. Appreciate you all tuning in. Let's move on to our second marquee matchup. It's a good one of the best rivalries in all of sports between Carolina and Duke. This one will decide the ACC and the 1 seed. Anyone here know all the 1 seed permutations for what has to happen for UNC to get it? I mean, if Duke wins this game, they're tied, and then it all comes down to a bunch of other things. Greg, do you know, or it's too hard to get into?
I do not know. The ACC, I do not try to spend much time on what Wake Forest's happenings are. That's Randall's territory.
Randall, Calabrese, you have this down pat by any chance?
I do not. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and get into this game because the bylaws of the ACC, they can't even get it so that they can keep Florida State in the conference, let alone figure out how to do this cleanly. So I assume it'll be some kind of logistical train wreck.
Stuck. I think if Pittsburgh wins and Duke wins, that's a big key for them. I think Pittsburgh losing would hurt Duke. That's all I got for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about this matchup. I personally like Duke. Not enough people are talking about how well Duke has been playing since that UNC loss. They've been playing arguably at a top 5, 6 level in the country. And I think at home, they'll be better able to control the tempo, which kind of got away from them on the road. So I like the Blue Devils. Randall, you're on the same page?
Are we in a world where Duke is actually undervalued? Guys, since December 3rd, Duke is 19-3. They've covered 5 straight home games with ease. First meeting, guys, 5 of 19 from 3-point range. Duke was. They are the #1 team in the ACC at 3-point shooting. Don't trust Hubert in a big spot. Revenge, whatever you want. I got it 4.5. It's going the other way. I still like it here. Yes, full steam ahead on Duke.
Greg, 3 for 3?
Yeah, 3 for 3, guys. I think you nailed it. Listen, I'm a big fan of moments. I still remember the moment that I got invited on Big Bets on Campus Live for the first time. I remember the moment last week when I hit the big parlay. There hasn't been a moment where nationally people have seriously considered Duke as a national title contender. I think that changes today. North Carolina had their moment back in mid-January when they were beating up on a bunch of teams ranked between 80th and 150th in the country. Teams started making threes against Carolina. We were calling it out back then. Before January 30th, teams were shooting 29% from 3 against the Heels. Since then, they're shooting 35%. Duke is 3rd in the country per Torvik since January 30th. That's ahead of Houston and Tennessee, 2 of the public's favorite Final Four contenders. It's time to start taking Duke seriously at that level, too. Statement win for the Blue Devils today and a cover.
Calabrese, you making it a clean sweep?
In my own way, I'm on Duke in this one, but I'm going to go with a player prop under 21 points for RJ Davis. Yes, Duke has been surging in the past 2 months. I mean, you can take all different sample sizes really since early December. But when you look at their defense in the past 5 weeks, since February 1st, 23rd by Torvik, and Davis shot the ball 14 times in their first meeting, but only scored 17 points. So they had a game plan to take him away from the Tar Heels. And Davis has been under this number in 6 of his last 9 games. He had a huge game against Miami that's kind of thrown off his average over that stretch. But for the most part, he's been having a quiet month. And he needs to hit at least 3 triples in this game to surpass the total. And Duke has been playing elite perimeter defense in the last 5 weeks, 15th in 3-point percentage D over that time. I think they're going to swarm him. There's not going to be open looks from 3-point range. So I like this under. I would play this all the way down to 20. And I think you can get plus money in the market if you can find a 20 out there.
All right. Good stuff. That's 3 nods Duke's way and an indirect one with Davis under points. Before we get out of here, one final task, and that's our second best bet. I'll kick things off. I'm going to go Texas Tech at home. one of the best home court advantages in all of college basketball. Baylor, similar to Arizona, they're in 344th away from home metric. Shout out to Haslametrics. Haven't been great away from home all season. I don't think Langston Love is going to play based on some of the comments by Drew, how they want to be cautious. And I think there's a chance, pretty good chance, that Warren Washington plays. Maybe McCaslin gets scared off because he brought him back too soon, but he was without a boot. He said yesterday in practice, they said they were hopeful. Senior night at home. I think there's a good chance he plays. He's huge for that entire team, especially on the defensive end. And this Baylor team, I think this is a good opportunity just to sell them high. Over their past 4 games, they're shooting 46% from three, opponents at 30%. So shooting regression, shooting variance has worked in their favor. Potential regression looms. And they've been going to the zone about 50% of possessions over the last 4 games. Don't necessarily want to do that against Texas Tech, who's been elite against zone this year, including scoring 1.4 points per possession against the Baylor zone in the first meeting when Washington didn't play. I think they lost by 6 or 7 in Waco. I like Texas Tech to get it done at home. Randall, where you headed for your final best bet?
My Iowa State Cyclones can still win the Big 12 if Kansas pulls the upset and follows you guys against Houston. Octagon of losses. I'm done with this Kansas State team. Oklahoma, TCU, blowing a 25-point lead to West Virginia. Let's take it easy with Kansas State. I'm taking Iowa State -3.5 at K-State. It's our 6th biggest edge here at FTN, 7% edge coming into the day. Tyler Perry, 7 points in the first meeting. Iowa State can lock them down. 349th Kansas State as the Wildcats in offensive turnover rate. And Iowa State is number 2 in the nation at defensive turnover rate. It is a bad matchup. Iowa State struggled in their last game at home, but they pulled it out. They're getting focused. I think they're a Final Four team. They lock up K-State, who's going to turn the ball over all game against them, and they still have the motivation. Enough with Jerome Tang. I'll take Iowa State laying the number, even in the octagon of losses.
Well, last week, I'm on the other side here. Last week, I had to send 2 shirts. I had to send a shirt. I lost 2 shirt bets to Greg and to Calabrese. Greg, I still need your address. Message me that. Shirt bet on this?
Yes, sir. You got it.
All right. Greg, you're headed to your beloved Big Ten country for your final best bet.
I am stuck. Sometimes you need to pay tribute to the greats, and that's what I'm doing here. It's Budarius Bowie's senior night, okay? I have bet on this kid more than any kid that I can remember in my 30 years of existence on this planet. And look, Northwestern's had injury concerns. We've talked about it on this very show. They're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games, despite all the guys that have come in and out of the lineup. They got Langborg back against Michigan State. It was an ugly basketball game, but he played 39 minutes in this game. They're significantly more dangerous if they have him at minimum full go. Minnesota, guys, something is wrong with this team. Body language PhD is screaming for me right now. Their last 4 games, 3 blowout-style losses, including a game where they never had a chance at the barn at home against Mike Woodson's Indiana program, the program where there's rumors of a mass exodus since they're bringing Mike Woodson back, control the game from start to finish. I don't get it. The one game Minnesota won in that span, they were down 41-18 at home to Penn State. Like, I think this team is reeling right now. I honestly think there's probably some stuff going on with players that know they're going to hit the portal, and maybe those rumors have affected the locker room a little bit. Just totally different team than they were a month ago. Northwestern at home, senior night, boo-booey statement game, getting healthy. I love this number, and it's moving in the opposite direction, by the way. It opened at 5. It's down to -4.5. I love that number for Northwestern.
Trust in Boo. Calabrese, finish us up.
I couldn't resist. I'm going to actually go with the same game parlay. I'm going to take Memphis plus the points and over 161. As you know, Stuck, FAU is addicted to playing in close games. 4 of their last 5 have been decided by 6 points or less. The first meeting between these 2 teams, it was a slow start and then fireworks in the second half, a 91-point second half, despite awful 3-point shooting. As the 2 teams combined to shoot 12 for 55 from long range. And here's the thing, having watched a decent amount of FAU basketball this year, when they get sped up, they are fine playing at a faster pace. They blow past totals. They've exceeded the closing total by 17 points or more 4 times since February 3rd. So if Memphis is able to speed them up, get them out of that half-court grind, then I see them blowing past this number of 161. And I just don't trust FAU to cover any number beyond a single possession. So the fact that this is bubbled up to 7, I'll go ahead and take the points. I think these teams are a lot closer than the spread would indicate.
Yeah. Jekyll and Hyde teams. FAU loves playing close games. I mean, they just love to be down or up by 2 with a minute to go, no matter who they're playing. Good stuff there. Before we get out of here, I'll put you all on the spot. You have to take one team, one of these 4 teams that gets upset today. Is it Duke, UConn, Houston, or Tennessee? Greg?
Going Tennessee. I think Kentucky gets it done.
You had Kentucky as your money line dog. Randall, who are you taking?
Tennessee's my national champion this year, but it's Tennessee today. No motivation.
Calabrese?
I'll go with Providence. I like the dunk. I like, the home court advantage there, the senior night element of it. I'll go with the Friars.
All right. Yeah, I'll join you there. All right. Good stuff. Thank you to Mike, and Greg for joining me. As always, thanks to our producers on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. We will be back same time next week. We'll have shows throughout March, many more, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays throughout the tournament. So make sure you tune in to those. We'll have much more info on Twitter. A couple final reminders. Make sure you download the award-winning Action Over Cap. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. Also, BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also, big bets on campus. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we have 5 more conference tournament previews coming up over the next few days. I'll be recording a bunch tomorrow, another one on Monday morning. So make sure you check those out. Good luck on all of your wagers today and throughout the rest of the month. Enjoy the madness, and we will see you next week. Cheers.